This is how to record your gross revenue from your Skool group memberships. Even though Skool only gives you a net payout, this is how to add the gross revenue amount and the processing fees to your books. I'm going to go right into the tutorial, and then we're going to talk about the whys and the what fors later. So you'll want to pull up your Skool group, your community, and your accounting software. So in your community, go to settings and then go to payouts. And then you're going to click on the payout that we're dealing with. So in this case, I'm going to do the most recent one. And that opens a reverse invoice. So you'll right click, hit print, save to PDF, and then we want to get the list of members that go into this. So mine is easy right now. I only have one member paying monthly. But if you have a bunch of different members and they're on different tiers and they're paying monthly versus annually, you or your accountant will need to be able to figure out what the gross amount is. And as you saw on the reverse invoice, Skool does not tell you. So you have to figure that out by going to our members. You can filter by tiers, so you can do both premium and VIP. I only have premium right now. VIP doesn't even exist, so I'm going to do that. Hit apply and then export, which gives you an Excel or CSV up here. So then what you're going to do is create, you can do it in Excel, but I prefer to use Google Sheets. So I have a Google Sheet here. You're going to import what Skool just gave you into your Google Sheet by going to File, Import, Upload. Then you can drag that there. And then it will say create a new sheet, which will do a new tab in this same sheet. Or you can replace, insert new sheets, replace the spreadsheet, replace the current sheet, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do any of that right now because I have already put some in here for us to deal with. What I would do in the future is insert a new sheet so that all of my monthly data will be in the same file. Okay, so I have some sample stuff in here for us to play around with because I only have one guy right now. So, it's pretty easy for me to do the data scrubbing for myself, but I wanted to show you what it looks like for you guys. So when you get the CSV of your members, it will give you all the information, their first name, their last name, their email, the membership questions, where they came from, blah, 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 LTV, all this stuff. You can delete all of the other columns. I would still leave the first names, that way you can keep track of who you're talking about. But the most important thing are price and recurring interval. The tier I left as more information, but it's not even necessary for this. So what we want to do is find the gross amount for the monthly people and then the gross amount for the annual people that paid in that time period. So monthly is pretty easy. You come up here. Well, first, what I would do is highlight this row, right click, go all the way to the bottom and hit freeze. So that way this stays as a header. And then you select this column, right click on it, and sort the sheet A to Z, which groups them by whether they're on a monthly subscription or on a yearly subscription. Again, the tier doesn't matter so much. This is extra data. We don't need it for this process. So for the monthly, all you would do is click on the cell, hold down the shift key on your keyboard, and click on the end of the group. And then down here, I hope you can see, in the bottom right-hand corner, it gives you the total amount, the sum. So if these actually were my members and these actually were the pricing that they were on, the gross membership revenue I would be getting from Skool is $423 for monthly subscriptions. Now, the annual subscriptions are trickier because the way Skool does it, they give you the full payout for the whole annual subscription when the person subscribes, which means that, let's say, so I actually do have someone on the annual subscription. They subscribed in December, I think, or November. So I got the payout for their annual subscription all at once in that month. So I don't need to count them again moving forward because it's going to throw off my numbers. So at the moment, the only way that I know how to know when someone signed up and paid the annual subscription is to go to your members, filter by the tier, and then you can go into their membership information and it will say like renews in 300 days. So you'll get an idea of how long ago they subscribed. Again, not perfect. And whoever is doing the data scrubbing will need access to your Skool account to be able to figure out the annual subscriptions. So if that's you, probably you'll know off the top of your head who just subscribed. But if it's your accountant, they'll need to have admin access to your group in order to do this, which is why when I work with clients who are on Skool, I have admin access set up as part of our onboarding. So that way I can come in here and get all this information without bothering them. Okay, but if you only have monthly, it's easy peasy. You just select all of the monthly subscriptions and then you get your sum down here. And this is the gross amount. So I would just type that somewhere so you don't forget it, because we're going to need it for the next step. Okay, then once you've done this data scrubbing and you have your total number of monthly subscriptions and then the total of the annual subscriptions that are being paid out for this period, you're going to go to File, you're going to go to Download, and then you can either download as a PDF or an Excel, doesn't matter. You can even do it as a CSV. These three are accepted by most accounting software. We just want to have this as our supporting documentation for why we're claiming the gross revenue that we're claiming. But you want to download that to your desktop so you have that available. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to download as a PDF just because I can. Current sheet, blah, 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 Coolio, export. Okay. So now that we have our invoice from Skool and we have our information on the gross revenue for the memberships, we are going to create a journal entry in your accounting software. So for me, that's QuickBooks. So I would come here to my QuickBooks, and then there's a couple different ways to get to it. This little plus up here is an option. You could click on journal entry there, or in your menu on the side, if you click new, you can get to journal entry there. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So I'm going to do it that way. And we are going to create a journal entry for every payout, which for me, since I only have one monthly subscriber, I only have to do this once a month. If you have a bunch of subscribers that have all joined at different points in time, the most often you would get a payout is weekly. The Skool documentation says that they pay out every Wednesday. So at the most, you would be doing, or your accountant would be doing this weekly. So we want to set the journal entry date to the date of the payout, and then we're going to debit the bank account that the payout went to for the net amount. The net amount is this, $844. So we're going to add $844. The net amount goes to my pool can, which is part of my money management system that I teach in my group. We're going to say Skool net payout for February 11th. And then I keep track of my vendors here. So I'll add Skool as the vendor, and then the class, if you keep track of classes. Then you're also going to debit the amount of the fees. So part of the reason why we're doing all of this is because we want to get credit for the full amount that the subscriber is paying, the full membership price. But we also want to get credit for the processing fees that Skool is taking out of that membership price, because processing fees are a deductible expense for businesses in the US and Canada. So in order to count that on our books, we need to add it this way, for now at least. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to that total that we saved here, which is not accurate for what my actual total is $9 because I only have one subscriber, but you would put the gross total, and then you can do a math problem in QuickBooks like this. So I can say $9 minus the net amount, $844, and then when I click out of it, it does the math for me. So the processing fee is 56 cents. And then I would add the expense account that we're putting that to. I'm going to put a little description here too, just because we're being extra on top of things. We're going to add the vendor again. Cool. Okay, so we have our total. So now we're going to credit that amount, the gross revenue amount, to our membership income account. So you could call this membership revenue, you could call this Skool members, you could name it whatever you want, but it's going to be an income account on your chart of accounts. And this gives you credit for the gross sale amount. Now this is coming from the members of your group. So I have this placeholder here. I don't I don't track it by individual member. Okay, so now we have the gross revenue, we have the processing fees expense, and we have the actual money that came into our actual bank account, net payout. Then we're going to attach both the reverse invoice and the membership report that we created in Google Sheets or Excel, whichever one. And this is our supporting documentation for in case you get audited. These are your receipts that show the paper trail of why you're claiming what you're claiming and why you're saying what you're saying. Okay, so we got all that. Now we can save and close. And then step 5 is to go to your bank feed in your accounting software, and you're going to match that payout that came into your bank account with that journal entry that you just created. So you want to create the journal entry before you categorize your transactions in the bank feed, so that way it has something to match to, because adding this as revenue from your Skool members and then trying to match a journal entry later really doesn't work. So journal entry first, then match the bank transaction. Ta-da! And that is how you calculate and get credit for your gross revenue from your Skool member subscriptions. Now, let's talk about why I did all of that. Because there's been a lot of changes within like the last month, so January of 2026, and we've had a whole conversation about it in the Skoolers group. And basically, from what I can tell, as of January 2026, Skool has changed its legal designation to merchant of record, which is apparently a global legal designation because they're dealing with people and groups and governments and tax systems literally all around the world. They have to have a one-size-fits-all solution for that. From what I can tell, I think that doing it this way, being a merchant of record, is primarily for sales tax and VAT remittance. So for people like in the EU with VAT requirements, or people who live in an area where a service is taxable with a sales tax, if Skool didn't do it for you, you would have to hold the taxes out from what your members are paying you. You'd have to remit them to the correct government body. You'd have to remember to do it on time, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of compliance and accounting work that most people don't know how to do, don't want to know how to do. And it can be very complicated to set up. Once it's set up, it's usually not that bad. But I'm an accountant, so I don't think it's that bad. So from what I can tell, Skool became a merchant of record so that way they could simplify the sales tax VAT process for all of the community owners providing services through Skool. Now, the way that the way the merchant of record works, and again, this is my understanding of it, is that Skool then becomes our customer instead of the actual members of our group. So instead of me having a client relationship with each paying member of my group, I have a client relationship with Skool, and they have a client relationship with the paying members of everybody's groups, which means that when a member subscribes to your premium tier, Skool is processing that payment through their payment merchant. They're paying the processing fees, they're collecting the money, and then they're remitting that payout to us through Stripe Express, which is why when I log into my Stripe, I don't see any processing data. So one of the things we were talking about in the Skoolers conversation is how come I can't see the processing fee amount from, say, a Stripe report? Well, that's because our individual Stripe accounts aren't doing the processing. Skool is doing the processing with their merchant, and the Stripe Express is like Zelle, but the Stripe version of Zelle. So we're just getting the money sent to us. We're not actually getting any of the data that goes along with it. So that makes it easier in some ways, but it also creates what I see as risks, because in order to be a merchant of record and do it this way, Skool has had to create a licensing agreement in their terms and conditions. So I'm going to share this and show you guys. So I found a couple of different places. The wording is different on the two different places, but this is what is currently on Skool's site, and I will share the link to this in the description of this video. So when you, the user, put content, which is video, text, posts, courses in the classroom, graphics, anything that you upload to Skool, they're saying that we retain ownership of this intellectual property or IP, but we are granting Skool a license to it by using Skool. And this the intellectual property right, the ownership remains with us, but the license grants Skool permission to use, reproduce, distribute, create derivative works of, display, and perform the content. The rights you grant in this license are for the limited purpose of providing, developing, and improving our services as permitted by applicable laws. This license is worldwide, non-exclusive, which means you can still license your content to others, royalty-free, which means there are no fees for the license, which means Skool is not paying us for the right to use our IP, sub-licensable, and transferable. Now, this version of it is worded this way. The other copy of the terms and services that I found has this language up here with the content. So I'm guessing this one is the most up to date, but since there's two different versions, it makes me wonder, because this wording here, perpetual, irrevocable, transferable, fully paid, royalty-free, non-exclusive, worldwide, fully sub-licensable, to use, copy, display, publish, modify, remove, publicly perform, create derivative works, distribute, and or otherwise use, blah, blah, blah. If this applies to our content, that basically means that Skool can take our courses and republish them as their own stuff and change it. I'm not okay with that. So I would very much like some clarification from Skool on this. So if that's not the case, which I really hope it's not, because that would be super sketchy, this part is on the edge of sketchy, and I'm still not super okay with it, because it still gives them permission to manage it in a way that could be taken further than it was intended to go. Now, whether this is the actual legalese that is in the actual terms and conditions, maybe that contract of the terms and conditions explains this more fully. This explanation is pretty vague, in my opinion. And so I feel like the licensing issue opens creators up to having their IP infringed on. Now, that's my opinion. That's my worst case scenario. The sky is falling. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do about this? Analysis. Ideally, best case scenario, the only reason to do this is because we need Skool to show people our stuff. And so Skool needs permission to show people our stuff. So in that case, calling it a license, again, makes me, it raises some concerns, but that makes sense. I think the sub-licensable and transferable initially really concerned me. But again, I think best case scenario, giving Skool the benefit of the doubt, this covers their butts in case they restructure something in their back end, they create a sub company underneath the Skool umbrella, blah, blah, blah. And so they don't have to reissue a new license agreement, a new terms and conditions for that case. This agreement that we're under currently would just then transfer to the new company legal structure. But it doesn't say that. So theoretically, you could argue that they could sub-license it or transfer it to a completely different company in case of, let's say, a merger, or in case Skool gets bought out by somebody else. So again, this is all very legal worst case scenario stuff that I'm talking about right now. Ideally, none of this will ever happen or matter or be a thing. But I read the fine print, and the fine print is kind of concerning to me, in my opinion. So you're free to think about that however you want. If you have a different opinion, please share it. I would love to see the best case scenario in this scenario. But that still brings us back to, do we need to be just claiming the payout, the net payout from Skool? Do we need to be claiming the gross revenue and the processing fees? So again, from my understanding from the conversation in Skoolers, which I keep referencing, so I'll probably link, with the CFO of Skool, because Skool is a merchant of record, legally, it is okay to claim the net payout as our income under the merchant of record designation. However, the merchant of record designation has more to do with processing and distributing in the case of sales tax and whatever. And when it comes to claiming and reporting the gross revenue, that is supposed to go to the principal. So in GAAP, GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and ASC 606. ASC 606 stands for Accounting Standards Codification, topic 606, which is revenue from contracts with customers. In that codification of how you handle contracts and customers and customer subscriptions and that kind of stuff, the principal is the party who is responsible for creating, for administrating, for teaching, for distributing, for marketing, for converting, for supporting, for fulfilling. And so basically Skool is saying, by saying that we only need to worry about the net payout, Skool is claiming that they are the principal. I very much disagree with that, because Skool is not creating our groups. They're not administering our groups. We don't have a Skool employee admin helping us run our groups. We're the ones teaching our content. We're the ones creating our courses. We're the ones filming our videos. We're the ones doing all of the hosting. We're the ones who are fulfilling the customers and helping them get success with what we're teaching them. Like, all of that is on us, which makes us the principal for providing the service, which means, according to GAAP and ASC 606, we should be getting the credit for the gross revenue. So when it comes to like legal and compliance and whatnot, I can only speak to the US specifically because that's where I am and that's the system that I've been trained in. From what I can tell, Canada and the UK is pretty similar, so I'm going to guess that it's more or less the same, but again, I can't speak to that specifically. When it comes to reporting income taxes, so we said that Skool is the merchant of record that has mostly to do with sales tax and VAT. That's about the sale of the service or the product. When it comes to reporting your income taxes, which the owner of the group would be doing either as a sole proprietor on your personal income return, or if you're registered as an LLC, you're either a disregarded entity, so you're still reporting it on your personal income tax return, or you're an S Corp, you have business returns, whatever. Legally, according to the US GAAP compliance, and I'm pretty sure Canadian, I forget the letters, but the Canadian way that they want you to do it, you're supposed to report total gross income from every possible place. And then you go through and you add your deductions and you add your expenses and you add your credits and you get down to either a refund or what you owe. So let's say we only do our net payout. We only claim the net payout as our income. We're not reporting our total income, which could theoretically, if you were talking to a person who was a stick in the mud about it, that could get you in trouble. So this is the gray area of accounting, which is why it's so controversial and emotional, because there are no hard and fast rules here. It all comes down to what you think you're comfortable with. If you ever got called into question what an auditor thinks is the right way to do things, if you and the auditor disagree, then it would go to like a tax court in the US. So then it would come down to what the judge thinks is appropriate or not. So it all comes down to like what people think about things. And generally speaking, at least for me, I don't want to play chicken with the government. So I want to have things as close to the way they should be as possible. So for me, I feel like it's appropriate to be reporting the gross income from what we're actually charging our members for being part of our group, and also being able to get that expense deduction for the processing fees that we are paying Skool. They're taking it out before they pay us, but we're paying Skool the processing fees for doing that transaction for us. So I think that it's more accurate to do it that way. Now, legally, again, it could go either way. And I'm not saying that there is a right or wrong answer here, because if you get an auditor or an accountant or a judge who agrees that Skool is the merchant of record and everything is coolio, then you're cool. But the other consideration is about data, because accounting has two sides: government compliance and taxes, and data analysis, understanding your business, making business decisions, knowing your KPIs, knowing your customer conversion rates and value and lifetime value, and all of those numbers come from the data, which the raw data, garbage in, garbage out. Like, if you're not giving the full picture, then you're not going to get the full picture in your numbers. So gross versus net makes a difference when it comes to business valuations, especially for Saas companies or for e-learning, which I feel like most people at Skool are doing some form of e-learning. So of course, businesses. When it comes to margin analysis and how healthy your business is, the processing fee is a cost of doing business. So that changes whether you have a gross profit margin or a net profit margin, and what those profit margins are. The amount that you're charging your customers also can influence pricing structure for other services that are maybe not on Skool. It helps you know key performance indicators, conversions, tiers, like all of that information are metrics that you don't have to, but you can track to make better business decisions and to decide whether you want to create a new product or improve one that's already doing well and just tweak it, make it better. Like those kind of strategic decisions come out of knowing your data. And you're not going to know your data if you don't have the full picture. So especially with biz valuation and margin analysis, it's very important to have the gross revenue and the processing fees as part of that picture. Now, what should you do? I'm not your accountant. This does not count as financial or legal advice. This is my opinion. So take it with a full grain of salt. Talk to the people you need to talk to. I'm just giving you an option for deciding, like a framework for deciding what direction you want to go with it. I think, in my own personal little opinion, that if Skool is a hobby, if you're not making that much from it, you don't foresee yourself making that much from it, you don't have any intention of turning it into a full-time thing, it's like your side gig that you do, you have your job, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And especially if you live in a country where the net payout and the merchant of record thing is totally cool and everybody agrees, I think that, personally opinion, I think that doing all of this reporting and journal entrying and all of that stuff could be overkill. Because if it's just a side gig, then it's not that, there's not that much pressure to see all of the details. So I think in that scenario, it could be okay to just go with the net payout, claim the net payout on your income taxes, call it a day, because the net is the same either way. If you are a business, you're registered as a business, you have hundreds of customers, you have customers not on Skool, maybe you brought your business to Skool from Facebook or your course platform or whatever it is. If you are a Saas business, if you are, I don't want to call it serious business and say that the hobby is not serious, because you can be very serious about hobby. But if you're planning to grow, especially if you're planning to sell your business at any point, if you're planning to get investors, you need to get credit based on gross revenue. If you have that kind of, I would say, a higher level considerations, then I do think that it would be worth it, even though this is a lot of trouble right now. I think it would be worth it to claim that gross revenue and go through the reporting and the adding the journal entries and the blah, blah, blah. That's my own personal opinion. Take it with a grain of salt, big fat grain of salt, and talk to your peoples, because this is just the way that I'm thinking about it right now. What I personally am doing, even though I only have one little membership right now, so technically I'm not even like fully hobby yet, I'm still gonna go with claiming the gross revenue and adding the processing fees, because I would rather have the system set up when there's like nothing to worry about, and so I can tweak it as it gets bigger versus trying to come in with hundreds of members and then trying to figure out how to make it work later. So I'm always the person who wants to do it right the first time. I would rather do the work up front to make it happen and then scale the system and tweak it as I grow. So I personally will be claiming the gross revenue and the processing fees. So please share what you think about all this. I would love to hear your thoughts, your perspectives. If I got the merchant of record thing totally wrong, we have a lot of different opinions because this affects everyone globally and how your governments and tax systems work. So again, I'm just talking about the US and Canada, mostly the US, but I think Canada is very similar. So yeah, if you want to have all of this information, but you don't want to have to do it yourself, I am an accountant. I do accounting for Skool creators. I would love to handle this for you. So just feel free to reach out. You can DM me on Skool, or I will link my website in the description so you can check out my services and everything that goes into it. All right, see you next time.